As you know, this is the measure of an episode, where it is our continuing mission to explore what makes Star Trek genuine Star Trek, and not just the Netflix blurb syndrome. More on that later. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jonathan, and we do this with three criteria. The first one is there sci-fi explored in the plot? Not just present, but actually explained. One of the things that Star Trek is known for is that kind of thing. As long as that's there, that's the first criteria is checked off. Second criteria, is that sci-fi presented in a unique or novel manner? Not as in some stereotypical sci-fi trope that we have seen in hundreds, if not thousands, of other sci-fi places. And the third one is there an ethical or moral dilemma that a character must face? Not just a question where they already know the answer, but they actually do some struggle or deliberation. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Paul. And this week, guess what? We watched Star Trek Picard, Season 3, Episode 3. 17 seconds.
Just 17 seconds of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all I could get through.
That was the speed we watched it.
Jonathan, I had so many revelations in this particular episode. So many things happened in this episode, not dramatically or even plot-wise. In fact, very few things happened plot-wise. In fact, I'm willing to say nothing happened plot-wise.
Oh, come on. There was a big reveal at the end.
What was the reveal?
The changelings?
Oh, we didn't know that already?
Yeah. It was supposed and speculated, but this episode made it clear.
I guess I like that Worf kind of intimated that he talked to Odo, who they couldn't have on the show because
he's a changeling, and his face was not quite proper. So the only thing that I can think is the Auberginois estate did not allow him to be on the show.
Or they just didn't want to deal with it, right? Because you also have to have the voice, and he had a very particular voice, a very specific voice. So maybe that's why. Maybe they probably just didn't want to deal with it. But I actually have a better answer than that. I think they didn't know who he was. I think that nobody watches the show who writes on the show. And that's where the Netflix blurb syndrome comes in. So it starts off with another flashback, right? And it's like, it's not even specific. Like, they're very inconsistent because it's like 2 weeks before.
Not even. It just said before.
It just said before. No, that was so 1 episode ago, episode 2, it was 2 weeks before, and now it's just before. And now they're running into this thing where they don't really have to say that anymore, because we could have gleaned from context that this is not happening as they're running from the crazy ship monster thing, that they didn't stop in to the bar on the holodeck, that this probably is happening before. It's not happening in the future, it's probably happening in the past. So we got that part.
We could intuit that. I guess my question would be, like, because this would be a really weird memory to have in the middle of this. So how would you segue from the before now to the now? I mean, I guess a huge explosion would probably let people know. So,
yeah, I think you would use something kinetic to do that.
Sure. Okay.
So I think there's tons of creative ways to do that without using titles.
By people who are paid to do that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They have ways of doing that. But once again, it's another flashback. And I don't know. I mean, I guess this particular flashback did a lot of work narratively to get us up to speed. The problem is it's inventing a lot of narrative that makes everything that happens in the episode relevant and self-contained. But they had 7 seasons and 4 movies worth, 3 movies? 4 movies worth of history to pull from, rather than creating more stuff to pull from. And I understand maybe they wanted to use the new Riker stuff I'm talking about, like Riker's son, and the experience he had when Marina Sirtis was in labor. What's her name? Troy. So I kind of get it, but I'm also thinking, I don't know, if it's a Star Trek show about the next gen cast, why don't we incorporate a little bit of stuff, a little bit of legacy plotline stuff that they're not doing. And we know why they're not doing it. It's because nobody has seen the show, The Next Generation, who's writing on the show.
Right. Nobody in the writer's room. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. What did you think of the flashback? The flashback itself, and also how it relates to the rest of the episode.
From this show and Coupling and How I Met Your Mother, and I'm sure other like drama shows that have had children, just that speech is very trite now.
It's such a cliche.
Yeah, it's such a cliche. And so it pulled me out of the moment in general, but I did kind of like that they kind of teased Picard in his rousing inspirational speeches where Riker thought he was done and he kept going. I don't know if you caught that or not, but he was about to take a drink.
Thought he was done?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Like in his toast, he thought he was done, and Picard kept going, and he kind of even like gave that fidgeting sigh of like, oh, how long is this going to take? Which I thought was pretty great. But to answer your question, I didn't feel like this scene was necessary to the episode, other than, Picard's going through the same 21 seconds that Riker went through in 17.
You timed it?
I did, yeah. I was like,
nice.
Here's the moment. How long is it going to take? Yep.
Yeah.
It'd be great if the episode was called 17 seconds-ish.
Yeah, maybe.
Give or take.
I wasn't really counting. It did feel very trite, and I felt like all of the things that were, unless if they had only said something that was unfamiliar in the sense of like what you were saying, like his speech says, yeah, I felt nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I felt nothing for this child. Like all I was a mess. I was tired. I was exhausted. I just wanted to go to sleep, and it's not necessarily a bad thing for Riker, but why not give him that moment?
Right.
And then later on in the episode, when tensions are high, Riker could say something like, I never finished my story. I finally came around to my son the second he looked at me or something like
right,
that.
Right, yeah. The second he made eye contact and smiled.
Make it a narrative that threads through the whole episode, so there's a little bit of release, because they basically just gave us this token that we were supposed to hang on to,
right,
to redeem at the end of the episode when Picard experiences it himself. Right?
That is such a good way to explain it. And yeah, that's totally what it was.
Yeah.
But having said that, I will say I really liked Riker in this episode far more than I have in the last two episodes. I felt like everything that was leading up to this episode was somebody writing what they remember Riker being, and kind of Jonathan Frakes just going through the motions, I guess. But this episode, like when he was talking to Jack and when he got pissed at Picard, like those moments were a lot better for me.
Yeah, Frakes is doing probably the best job, if you ask me. He feels like the most familiar as a character. They didn't really give Crusher much to do. I actually felt that Crusher was Gates McFadden was doing a great job in terms of what they gave her to do.
Yes.
But that leads me, so there's the scene where Crusher she's, I guess, feeling better.
I feel like maybe it's the episode, the scene you're about to say, but I feel like this scene, they should have just taken out the dialogue. They should have just done it all with their eyes.
You're making a joke?
Yeah.
Is that a joke?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. I mean, they could have done it without talking. I mean, I thought that's a good note, right? There's too much talking in this episode. But there's the scene where the Trill doctor is sort of being very ageist
in
this moment, because she should know who Crusher is.
Right.
Because the Enterprise is famous, and Crusher, would be easy to assume, is fairly famous, or right in the Starfleet,
Yeah.
She does this thing where she says, "Sorry, we don't do this anymore. That was 20 years ago. Step aside, lady."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking to myself, Crusher didn't retire and then go off somewhere, right? She continued being a doctor, right? Like, even if she wasn't even part of Starfleet, they're making this assumption of she's been in hibernation somewhere, not being a doctor for the last 20 years. That's like a terrible assumption that this person is making, and it's a terrible scene. And the only reason they did it was because they don't know the show.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know Next Gen, because all they're doing is grabbing on to the lowest hanging fruit of plot devices. They're doing it with Picard, they're doing it with Crusher, and they're doing it with
Worf.
Who's the other guy? Worf. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I couldn't remember their name because they're not actually in the episode. So let me get into this. This is called the Netflix blurb syndrome. Because you know, when we read the Netflix blurbs of Star Trek, basically what happened for those of you who are just now tuning in, I guess you can't anymore because it's not on Netflix anymore. But when you did, when you could, you would read the Netflix blurb, and the blurb was written by someone who only watched the cold open. We've proven it. Go back and listen to all of our episodes. We have 150 of them. Every single time we read the blurb, and it's obvious that they only superficially gleaned information from watching 5 minutes of the episode and then moved on, right?
Yep.
So that's what happens with this whole show. Because if you think about it, they took nothing of Crusher's character and inserted it into her scenario that she's in now.
Right.
They just made her an old doctor. Oh, you're just an old person.
Well, almost not even an old doctor. It's like an old love, an old flame who used to be a doctor.
Yeah,
you know?
She used to be a doctor, or she's old, so therefore out of date.
Right.
Which doesn't really work.
But it didn't.
It doesn't really make sense.
It didn't feel like she was in the episode to be a doctor. You know, it felt like, I mean, maybe I'm just focusing on that one scene where Picard and Beverly had that conversation. But it felt like she was in the episode to provide that tension to Picard. And when she wasn't doing that, they needed her to do something else, so they put her in sickbay. Which, right. I mean, as a doctor, that makes sense. That's where she would go. So I'm not faulting them that part. But you're right. It was like, oh, she's a doctor, but she's old. So let's have people talk about how she's an old doctor.
Right. I know what they were going for. They wanted her to have a moment where she comes in, nobody knows who she is, and all of a sudden, oh, she's this brilliant doctor who worked on the Enterprise. But they did a perfunctory job in setting that up. All they did was have the Trill doctor lady say, "Get out of the way, old geezer."
Yeah.
You know what you're talking about. And there wasn't even a moment where she has to make a split decision and save somebody's life based on some sort of calculation or observation that only she could have made.
Yeah.
They didn't do that.
No.
She just says like, "No, I'm going to does it hurt when I push you here?" It's like, "Oh, that's brilliant. I would have never thought to do that. Thank you. Please continue taking my job."
Right.
You know, I almost agreed with the Trill doctor in that moment.
Well, and even before that, there were several times where like the writers did not do any medical research because she was like, "It's just some broken ribs. You'll be fine." Like,
well, they have like the scanner thing where the scanners can tell you basically everything in one fell swoop. But regardless, I know we have Crusher, and Crusher needs to be a character. They just didn't do a lot. I mean, they had that very long conversation between Picard and Crusher, basically explaining how he has a kid and doesn't know about it, you know, in this futuristic society.
Yeah.
It wasn't particularly poignant because I was having trouble following it.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, I understood what they were saying, but it still didn't make sense as to why you couldn't send an email, especially because Jack seems to be mad at Picard because he was an absentee father, except Picard didn't know about him. So why is Jack mad at Picard? And Jack was given the opportunity to contact Picard, which he didn't take. So I don't understand why Jack would be mad at Picard. The only person who deserves to be mad is Picard, and he deserves to be mad at Crusher because she just basically kept it from him for no reason.
Well, and
like everything he said was true.
Right, and the first two episodes, he gives no indication that he knows who Picard is or his relationship to him. You know, he just says something about the stories, and then he says later on, like, I didn't have a dad.
But he says it in such a way where someone who has had an absentee father would say it. He didn't say, "Oh, I never had a dad."
Yeah, but he didn't say it in an accusatory manner towards Picard.
No, you're right. I think that they were being choosy about how someone in that position in real life would play it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah.
I feel like that if they made him too snarky, it would have been obvious who he was from the beginning.
As opposed to the way they wrote it, where it was completely out of left field.
Well, I guess that's true. I mean,
we were blindsided by it, but we all knew the fact that Beverly had a son and Picard didn't know about it. Like, basically from the second scene when he leaves Laris, like, we knew that he was going to meet his son. And it's
Right.
just it you know
He has
it's
a British accent.
right. I mean it's
They just
like
explain it away.
yeah, and he like and that was another explanation that could have been so much more fun. You know, he was raised by some alien race that we have barely know anything about, maybe like one from Voyager or something. And she said like their English comes across sounding British.
Yeah. Or he watched a lot of BBC as a kid. I don't, I tried to get him off of it.
Right? He grew up on
He would-
Peppa Pig and British Baking Show. Like that's just
Yeah. That would have been so great. Yeah, I felt like that whole scene between Crusher and Picard, we learned nothing else. We learned nothing about what Crusher was doing. They, in one line, explained away why she was like, trust nobody. Like that line at the beginning, which they opened the whole show with,
right.
implied a huge conspiracy that only Crusher could tell Picard. And it was going to be this huge bombshell of information. And it was just like, yeah, something happened, and I just felt like I couldn't trust anybody. It's just like the end. That's it.
I mean, I think it's going to be. I think that the changelings are why you can trust no one.
I guess that's true. When somebody can just become. Although I'm really going to get super tired of it very quickly if we're doing this thing where we don't know who we're talking about, and like Worf walks up to Picard and tells something to Picard, and then Picard walks away and Worf changes into like another person. I hate this type of plot line where we don't know who's who.
Right.
And because we know, but nobody else knows. And so we're just waiting for the characters to catch up to what we know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's kind of interesting. Like we're not really in any kind of age of McCarthyism, at least as far as I know, but here we are with Picard season 3 with reintroducing the changelings, which is a nice callback to DS9, and that may be all it is. But then we also have Marvel's Secret Invasion happening as well. And like both of these shows, one right after the other, to be about not being able to trust if you're talking to the right person, it's a very interesting coincidence.
I guess so. I mean, it also is a very easy way to create tension. Because it's, they're not the person you thought they were.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Tune in next time to see if they are the person you thought they were. It's a kind of an easy way to drive a narrative.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to back up just a little bit and talk about Beverly's side because, you said Picard was asking all the right things. And I agree with you, but I feel like Beverly's defense was pretty solid too. Like she realized kind of what every superhero realizes, that because Picard is constantly going on these adventures where his life is on the line and there are people who genuinely want to kill him, an easy way to bring him into the fray, or not into the fray, or into the line of fire, would be to take his son as a hostage. And so if Picard knew he had a son, and his son knew that Picard was his dad, like that would become common knowledge. And so anyone who was out for Picard could easily go after his son instead.
I agree with that, but I think I think what Picard said, which is like, you didn't give me the choice. You didn't even tell me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, but Beverly could have said, either you can be his father and retire, or you can continue being Picard and he will not be in your life. But I can't do both. It's
Right.
too dangerous for everybody. So make your choice. The choice, and
Yeah.
we're going to disappear tomorrow. You'll never see us again whichever one you choose. You have to decide. You have 1 hour to decide.
Right. And for every minute you delay, right?
Yeah. That would have been interesting if that had been the flashback.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like that could have been done. It didn't have to be his unknown son. It could have been like Beverly reaching out to him and having that flashback, of what you just said. And like basically the same conversation, just with her being pregnant. I mean, maybe they didn't do it that way because that would have to be flashback to a younger Beverly and,
Well, it's a different show too. That's a
Technology's
different,
rougher.
like they can't, I don't know if they can do that in the middle of what they're doing. That's why creating all of this back narrative to just explain how we got here, it falls flat. It's not poignant because there's too much detail to go into.
Right. Yeah.
In a
What
5-minute
you didn't
conversation.
know is, yeah.
Felt like I didn't get a good dose of Beverly Crusher, because Beverly Crusher is kind of just another scientist on the ship in the Next Gen show.
Mm-hmm.
She did have, obviously she did have a romantic relationship with Picard,
Right.
but that wasn't what defined her as a character.
Right.
At all,
No.
really. I want to go further down the rabbit hole with my revelation.
Okay.
Number 2 revelation.
What was your number 1?
Captain Dick. As much as I like Captain Dick, I like him even more every episode. I love it. I love that he's just so over it. He's even mortally wounded, and he's like, "What's going on?"
Right.
And Jack is trying to have a moment with him, apologizing. Is like, "No, I don't care.
Right.
How are they keep finding us?" He doesn't care. As much as I like his character,
This is the hole in the script.
yeah. I feel like Riker should have been Captain Dick and keep all the vitriol there. Invent some reason why they are mad at each other. I know that we have the previous 2 episodes or previous 2 seasons to deal with in terms of they were chummy. That could have been part of the mystery, Riker's super pissed at Picard and have him be the captain of the Titan.
Mm-hmm.
That way you avoid all of this back and forth because they're there now, right? They now have, like, Riker now has the same contempt for Picard that Captain Dick did for both of them at the beginning of the show. So they've converged at the same place. And I wonder, is Captain Dick going to die? I don't know. It seems like he's pretty banged up.
Right.
But maybe I have a feeling don't you?
It doesn't matter. But
Oh, you do know.
I almost feel like the vitriol that you're talking about that should be there from the beginning doesn't even have to be. Like, it could easily be that Riker was pulled out of retirement and Picard goes to see him on the Titan thinking that he's going to do him this favor, and he's like, "Hey, I got a call from Beverly," and he's like, "Oh my gosh," and he's like, I need your ship," and Riker's like, "I can't," and like, kind of what we were talking about with Shaw from the beginning. Be sympathetic, like, recognize their accolades and their accomplishments, and say, like, I love everything you've done. I'm not going to help you with this, and then have the writers be creative in how they're like, Riker shoots him down. Yeah,
it would have saved a lot of time, I guess. But I guess they wanted to have this new character, and they wanted to have a reason to confine 7 to quarters, number 7. And by the way, when that happens and Captain Dick transfers command of the Titan to Riker,
mm-hmm.
I feel like there should have been an acknowledgement in the scene where she tries to leave, because she tries to leave after that command transfer happened.
Right.
And she could have said, "Wait, I thought the command was transferred." And then she just quickly asks Riker, "Is this still standing?" He's like, "No." And then, "Okay, I'm going to leave now."
Right.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. But then we would have lost the line from her of "You're insane." The way she delivered that was fantastic.
Yeah. Also, this whole thing of punching somebody once and that they're completely knocked unconscious, a huge, gigantic security guard who weighs twice as much as Jack does. It should have just been ticklish. It's like...
I mean, I was in high school, but I got slapped by a gal who was upset, not even at me. I was just trying to find out what the problem was. And she was walking away, and I like ran over to her and I tapped her shoulder, and she like full on 180-degree spin momentum slapped me across the face. And
You forgot this.
Right. But no, I mean, thankfully I didn't crumble to the ground, but I like full hard reset. Like,
yeah,
I came to looking at the wall and like looking ahead and seeing her storming off, and like full emotional reset on me. And I was just like, oh, well, I guess she doesn't want to talk about it. And
I'll take that as a no.
Right. I mean, that's kind of how it was. But like, I feel like if there had been a fist there, just because I don't know how to take a punch, which I guess I see what you're saying. Like, as a security guard, he probably knows how to take a punch.
It felt uncreative.
Sure.
In how to get out of the situation.
Yes. I mean, and you knew it was coming the moment the security guard said, "You can't get out of here."
And I felt sorry for the security guard. He probably lost a couple teeth. He's going to have a concussion.
Right.
You know,
Just doing his job.
can't go swimming anymore. I'm sure
No
there's some
heavy lifting.
long-term consequences. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just felt uncreative. So
Yeah.
another thing about Seven, they have Mozart playing in Seven's room.
I know.
And they do this twice in the episode. There's some sort of theme buried here of some kind. I don't know. I don't know why. I like that it wasn't some very cliched Mozart piece.
Right.
But if only there were precedent of her liking Mozart or classical or choral music or some sort of indication of why she likes it. It's like it's the nearest perfection of music, right? That was a terrible sentence. What does that even mean? But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
She could admire it because it is as close to perfect as possible. And a lot of people say that about Mozart music, which is kind of ridiculous. Almost as ridiculous as like if your baby listens to Mozart, he'll be smarter or she'll be smarter. You know, that kind of stuff. But like she doesn't say that, right? She never said that. It'd be cool if that's what she did in Voyager. She's always like regenerating to Mozart. In fact, why didn't they do that? That'd have been great.
Right.
But anyway, they didn't do that.
They didn't.
In either case.
Yep, but they didn't do that.
And it just felt like, why is this here? What are they trying to say? Because later they do that with Worf. And oh my God, don't get me started on Worf. This is where you're supposed to say, no, tell me.
Oh, I just assumed that you were going to. I'm sorry.
Oh,
that was like, I don't like to talk about it.
So I guess we'll get into the whole Netflix blurb syndrome. This is why. So again, they are starting from scratch with 7 of 9. They have the avatar of 7 of 9, the decal, and they know a little bit about her. And she's a veteran of this show, of Picard. And so they kind of can lean on that a little bit. But then they throw this thing like she listens to Mozart. You got the idea that she's like trying to do it to calm down or something like that, or trying to focus on something. And then we have Worf. And boy, am I pissed about Worf, because I was kind of excited, because the thing about Worf is, okay, so when he first started in the show, in Next Gen, he was the beast man, right? He would growl, and he was just sort of the muscle. He wasn't even the head of security. He was just a guy who they called to beat somebody up, to bust some knees.
Well, to get beat up, to show how strong the other people were. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But he evolved so much over the course of even the first 3 seasons. Yeah. They gave him so much to do, and he actually became a very pacified person. And he was very enlightened, and he tried to adopt his Klingon ways without being a slave to them. And he had great reverence for his Klingon heritage, et cetera, while still having been raised by human parents. And so he was this nice middle ground between humans and Klingons. And I think a good word by the end of the 7 seasons is that he was an enlightened being, right?
Sure.
And then this show comes, and all they knew was that he's the beast man from Next Gen. He's the warrior. And so every line is a one-liner about, oh, I thought beheadings were on Tuesday, and I've been trying to calm myself. Would you like some chamomile tea? Because I've been trying to be calm, and I no longer just have this bloodlust for everything that I do. And first of all, he never did that. He was never somebody who just wanted to kill people. I mean, I guess you could argue in the first or second season he kind of was, but he went through the academy at Starfleet.
Right.
And so nobody did this homework on this. He has returned to being a one-dimensional character. And how great would it have been? It would have done so much work for me if instead of offering Rafi chamomile tea, which is just out of nowhere, offer prune juice.
Oh, so good. Right.
Very relaxing, keeps you regular,
Yeah. It is a warrior's.
But they're flaunting how much they don't know about these characters. And what a missed opportunity. What a shame.
Yeah.
And so this is what we're now calling the Netflix blurb syndrome, which is all you do is you read the first line or two of a character description and go with it.
Yeah.
Did this occur to you while you were watching it? Were you as incensed as I was?
No. I agree with what you're saying. The thing that irritated me was how much they dove into him being a pacifist when the first time we see him, he slaughters everyone in the room.
It's like the Guinan scene. It's like how they treated Guinan, right? It's just the broad strokes. Like, oh, she's the bartender, so she's got to be a bartender in the future too.
But also, I may have missed this. She asked him whether or not he was still Starfleet, and what did he say?
He was a subcontractor, which I feel like he's being cagey about something. He's still not letting her in,
right,
to whoever is ordering him around or something like that. You get the sense that he has a boss, but he can't tell her who the boss is.
Right. It's gonna be Picard.
It just goes full circle.
Yep.
I mean, Brent Spiner has to enter at some point, right? So
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you already know who that is, and I've seen several pictures of him.
I do know who Brent Spiner is. Yes.
Yeah. Nice. Well, Worf does something interesting because he lets on when he's talking to Rafi. It says, "You've served me well, thank you," and he kind of turns and walks away as though, "I'm done with you. You're relieved, right? You're done." And she's like, No. I'm in this for the long haul until the end. I'm here to see it through.
Yeah.
People died because of me. And then at the end of that scene, she's like, "You and I will go get the bad guys," right? And I was like, when did that switch happen?
Yeah, like he never clarified to her, and it wasn't clear whether or not he changed his mind based on her insistence, or that was the plan all along. So yeah, I agree. Like he was making it past tense. She even acknowledged that it sounded like he was dumping her, and then he just turns around and he's like, "Let's go."
And then they have that scene where we are now partners. And I feel like her response should have been, "In what? What are we doing?"
Right?
What is the goal?
Well, or even now?
Yeah. Like right now?
Well, yeah, like
is this just so I'll pick up half a lunch? Or like
right.
What is
this was the moment that you decided we're partners?
Yeah. And I liked the interrogation, I guess. I thought it was at least interesting. It was a good reveal to that whole thing where he just is a gloop and then he kills the changeling just by shooting the, like, why wouldn't you keep it? Why wouldn't you keep him around?
Right.
Yeah. Put him in a bucket.
Yep. And then seal the bucket.
Put him in the fridge.
Right. I wonder if you freeze a changeling, like
yeah, do they just go into like hibernation?
Right.
Like when you,
or does that kill them? Yeah.
That's a good point.
And can you?
They're not mammals,
right?
They're not like,
is it like the T-1000 where if you freeze it and shatter it and then let it thaw, it'll glue back together? I did that. That was a good callback because both of those things happened. Odo kind of had the same kind of reaction when he was needing to regenerate, and that was kind of the same reaction that Rafi had when she was going through her withdrawals. So it was nice that those two things tied together well enough that it did look like he was just going through the withdrawal that she did, but then Worf brings it back to the changelings.
Yeah, and what was great about that scene is all of the things that Worf and Rafi say were automatic. We already knew them because visually they'd happened, but they had to spell them out for us for some reason.
Right.
And I would love to know, is that a note from the higher up that we want as many people to be able to understand the show as possible? Or is it that the writers felt that, where is the contempt for the audience happening? Is it the writer level or at the executive level?
Right. Well, yeah, again, same thing. There was even a moment, I wish I could remember what it was, but there was a moment where they recapped in dialogue what had happened in a previous episode. And, this is designed to be binged. Even if you wait a week, you are going to remember what happened before. This is not a standalone episode, and they're not referencing things that happened in season 1.
Yeah. I mean, the same thing happened in the previous Strange New Worlds Una episode, where they have this revelation that she is asking for asylum, and they have to flash back to 5 minutes ago where she says, and it's just, you don't need it.
No.
We'll do the math.
Right. Yeah, you don't need the flashback. And you don't even need the flashback to have the callback. Like, you can put it in Nira's dialogue.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like they could just be much more creative.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
So I have few little nitpicks here and there.
After all
so
this
the
praise.
Shrike is attacking the Titan they're pulling their punches.
Oh my gosh, I love how
bored
Titan. She was with it. Fire.
Yeah, I know.
Fire.
She's trying to be kind of stoic, but she's not a stoic character, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not clear. It's funny that we're not getting we got no more information about her at all.
Yeah.
She was just there smoking. So the Shrike attacks the Titan and it hits the shields. You see the shields react, right? You see that blue shell happen around the Titan. But then there's a fireball that happens on top of the shields. And you get the impression, okay, well, either the shields aren't working, which I don't think is true, or it's somehow, for some reason, creating a fireball. So that just struck me as that's never happened before in Star Trek ever. It happens when they break through the shields and they're destroying parts of the ship. There's fireballs then, right?
Right.
But not when the shields are up.
Yeah.
In fact, if there was a fireball, it'd be kind of cool to see because when the laser hits the ship and the shields, it jolts the ship in such a way where it causes some sort of damage, where a fireball happens contained by the shields, and so it kind of spreads out underneath the shields.
Right. It'd be cool also if the damage was there for them to see, like kind of like what happened in Generations, where the hull was breached in that spot and there was a shield up, so they were able to run down to the entrance, the doorway, and look out and see how much had been taken off of the ship. Kind of along those same lines where like the damage to the hull was done, but then a shield went up to protect it, and so you had like the fire roll over across it and you had people in it able to see it. That would be a neat perspective of that.
Yeah. But they didn't have time because Riker has to be mad at Picard.
I mean, I feel like also giving the effects crew the benefit of the doubt here, and the writers, like, the same thing. That's a pretty complicated visual effect. So,
well, they're doing complicated visual effects for this whole show.
I guess that's true too. Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, it's
fair.
Pretty nice looking show.
So,
it
yeah.
seems like they have the budget.
Yeah, they just needed that time for Riker's argument.
Yeah, maybe they have it. Maybe it's a deleted scene somewhere.
No, I mean, it's not even deleted. They have that written in the script, and there's a big X over it from the producers, and it says, needs more Riker dialogue.
Well, that's the missing page.
Right.
That ties everything together. So, more about the Titan. It must be the slowest ship in Starfleet, because when they make it to the edge of the nebula and they're getting ready to escape, and they've ramped up the warp engines and they're getting ready to go, they're prepared to fast forward, and they have speed. Like, it's just moving so slow. Mm-hmm. And they get out of the nebula, and then the Shrike puts their portal gun thing on it, and they do the portal thing. And it just felt like, why are you, like, helmsman, why are you aiming for the hole in space? It's a finite hole that we're going through. Like, can you just go around it?
Right. The first one felt like the gap between them was too short. It was, like, it was already moving and the nose was going into the portal as it was opening. So that one, yes, I will concede. But you're right. Like, the rest of them, it just felt like the Austin Powers Zamboni moment.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, it didn't feel stress-inducing or tension-inducing in a good way. They couldn't quite figure out how to execute what it said in the script, which was the Titan is trying to escape, but the portal gun is ahead of them at every turn.
Right.
But I guess there wasn't a good sense of, it just seemed like they were slowly moving, and they weren't. If they had put something in space, like debris or something, where it's whipping by the Enterprise, like where it looks like they're really cooking and they're trying to get away, but they're just in a cloud. And so it just kind of looks like they're floating by lackadaisically and trying to get out of the thing. And the tension on the bridge is like, go, 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 go. And they cut to in space, and it just it doesn't feel that way. For some reason, it just didn't land for me. Did that land for you?
No, and I completely agree. And it's so fascinating watching Strange New World and Picard side by side like this, because the action scenes in space in Strange New World are high octane. You know, they're very tense. I don't think we've seen any this season yet, but the one where they were trying to get away from the Gorn.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
I mean, there was that whole chase that I remember. I don't remember which episode it was.
Right.
But they're chasing through an asteroid field.
They weren't in warp at that point, which could have been the argument here because the warp engines were down. And I don't know, if they only had propulsion power or if they did have impulse power.
They said something weird. I don't know if I just misheard it, but they said our warp coil is damaged or something like that. They said something warp is damaged.
Mm-hmm.
Then she said we can only go something impulse.
Okay.
And I always thought those two things are not related.
Right. And I remember that moment. And I think what she was saying was just, our rocket fuel is out. We can only, or our battery is dead. We can only use gas power.
Okay.
And because of the damage that's already been done, like to me, it felt like warp is out of the question. Like we just can't do that at all. And we can only go this much impulse.
So they were faced with a Back to the Future 3 dilemma of they were out of gas and they need to find a way to push the Enterprise to get them up to 88 miles an hour.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the fastest
Am I getting that right?
Titan can go.
Yeah. That seems like about as fast as they were going in this show,
right?
By the way.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm looking forward to in the next episode is I want to see what this villain is all about.
Yeah.
I suppose I'm slightly intrigued by the leak or the traitor or whatever, or not the traitor. What do you call that when someone has infiltrated? The infiltrator? Yeah. Infiltrator?
Oh.
Is that a related word?
Maybe.
Is traitor and infiltrator?
Right. Is traitor just an abbreviation of infiltrator?
Oh, very interesting.
Right.
Nah, they kind of mean different things though. You can be a traitor and not move, right? But an infiltrator is someone coming from the outside in.
Yeah, I feel like that's incredibly similar.
Should we spend 15 more minutes on this?
Or should we back it up 15 seconds and throw up for the next 11?
Good callback. Was that even in the show?
Yeah,
I think it was.
Unless you took it out a second time, it was in there.
Yeah. No, I keep taking it out. It still stays in.
It's because you forget.
Yeah, but so anyway, Captain Dick. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with him.
I am hopeful that there is some kind of throwback by the end to seasons 1 and 2 of that huge big bad of the advanced AI.
I mean, the Shrike kind of looks like what came through the portal hole.
Sure.
And it was a portal.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So maybe
well,
that'd be cool.
And same thing, like
great.
I wonder if they're going to explain that the portal gun was developed like with, I don't know if anything was left behind, so maybe not. But it just like where did the portal gun come from? Obviously, Starfleet had it. So where did was that? Is there going to be any explanation for how they discovered that, or is it just going to be Starfleet was working on it?
Or was it Borg? Or is it Borg?
I don't know. No. I hope we find out.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to stay optimistic.
Yeah,
because we have 7 more episodes.
Right. Yeah, we've got 7 more episodes, and I feel like this is moving actually at a decent clip. I feel like some of this stuff could be tightened, but this doesn't feel like season 1, where at least so far, actually both seasons 1 and 2 had like 2 or 3 episodes that were just filler. And this feels like each episode has a little bit of stuff that could be taken out. But so far, we have not hit an episode where it's like, why did we devote our time to this?
Yeah, it does feel... I mean, this previous episode felt like a big filler, even though a lot happened in terms of people being mad at each other.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like the plot was not advanced really at all, except we know that there's now an infiltrator.
Right.
Of some kind.
But there was enough, for me, there was enough character stuff in it that... Yes, it all could have been tightened up, but I think that if it had just been left out, it would have been even more frustrating that they didn't acknowledge it.
Yeah, I don't want to be the cynical guy who just wants to bag on Picard. But I feel like our complaints are valid ones, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people who love the show, but
Right.
tell me please tell us if we're being invalid, if we're being invalids here.
And then once you've told us, share it with a friend.
Absolutely. If you disagree with us wholeheartedly, send it to somebody else who would also disagree with us.
Or send it to somebody else who you think agrees with you and see if this changes their mind or if it just supports your thoughts.
Yeah, it would really help us out.
The more
Send it
people
to a friend.
make this a discussion.
All right. Well, any predictions that you don't already know the answer to?
I actually know very little about this series. I tried to stay away from spoilers, except for
It's kind of hard.
the episode we're watching.
way.
Yeah. I do know a little bit about Brent Spiner. I don't know what character or characters he plays, but I do know a little bit about what happens with the characters that are there. And I do know what happens with Captain Dick.
Oh, okay.
Those
okay.
that's kind of the only two things that I do know about the show. So I don't know how Brent Spiner shows up. I don't know what episode, what I know happens in.
Okay. All right. What are you watching next?
Strange New Worlds.
Episode 3.
Episode 3. Yeah. So,
No? 3? No.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3.
3. Yep.
Yeah.
Because Una Chin Riley is back, and now we get to find out something else about another character. So I've been Jonathan.
And I've been Paul.
And this has been The Measure of an Episode.
But you already knew that.